Here's even more from the City of Angels, run by Democrats. Headline KUSI TV News. Headline, Los Angeles Teachers Union says public schools should not reopen unless their demands are met. Quote, the Los Angeles Teachers Union is one of the largest in the state, and the United Teachers Los Angeles say public schools should not reopen unless their demands are met. Their demands include implementing a moratorium on private schools, defunding the police, increasing taxes on the wealthy, implementing Medicare for all, and passing the HEROES Act, which allocated an additional $116 billion in federal education funding to the states. The union's demands also took aim at charter schools. The United Teachers Los Angeles Union says these policies must be implemented on both the state and national level before reopening schools. And headline New York Times, teachers are wary of returning to class and online instruction too. Unions are threatening to strike if classrooms reopen, but are also pushing to limit live remote teaching. Their demands will shape pandemic education. And I quote, teachers in many districts are fighting for longer school closures, stronger safety requirements, and limits on what they are required to do in virtual classrooms, while flooding social media and state capitals with their concerns and threatening to walk off their jobs if their key demands are not met, unquote. So, they won't work unless their political demands are met. And if they do, they want to work the least amount of hours, but for full pay. Government education teachers can make any crazy demand they want with the threat of withholding the service that you and I must pay for. Now, most Americans can't afford to pay the taxes, they can go elsewhere to make choices. And that's what happens when a society trades a competitive free market system for a government-run monopoly. In a market-based system, if the teachers refuse to work, having nothing to do with their safety, you and I would just take our business to whomever would meet our needs. Now, let me pivot here to private property. See, at the top, I said the left was closing in on its goal to eliminate private property rights. If you were raised in or near or ever commuted for work to a major metropolitan city, you couldn't possibly imagine life absent of government-run trains and buses. The left wants you out of your cars and on government rail via the Green New Deal. And the excuse for government-run transportation has always been that cities are too densely packed for everyone to have a car. Now I'm setting something up here, so stick with me. I'm going to use my own state of New Jersey. Now, I'm here in D.C. I drove my privately owned pickup truck. But let's take travel from the middle of the state to New York City, starting with Middletown. A monthly pass can cost you $445 a month. For that money, you can easily afford a car, truck, or SUV. So let me ask you this. After riding 5 years of the government rail versus owning a car, what would you have? Well, after 5 years of riding government rail, government transportation, you would own nothing. Even with the depreciated value of the car at the end of a finance agreement, you would own the car. You could trade it in, sell it, give it to a family member. In other words, you have now acquired private property. The left wants to break this. And I can't believe I'm going to do this, but Teen Vogue, yes, the magazine aimed at young girls, has all of a sudden become a left-wing hotspot. Headline, an eviction crisis is coming. We need to treat housing as a right. Quote, the response to this crisis has made it even more clear that party politics are a sham, and the real political affinity lies within class and race. While we're working to abolish the police, we must also work to dismantle what the police were put here to protect: property. What is more evident of the legacy of settler colonialism and its violence than the idea of the ownership of land? What helped shake the unequal distribution of wealth and enduring segregation of our cities, quite like centuries of racist property laws? Headline, New York Daily News. Socialists hoping to unseat Dems in Albany want to abolish private property. Quote, a slate of Democratic socialists hoping to bring their anti-capitalist agenda to Albany have some thought-provoking proposals, like doing away with private property. Quote again, we believe that we should eradicate private property and go to a model of collective ownership, the 29-year-old told the crowd. That's why we will invest in things like community land trusts, unquote. Well, add it all up, whether it's housing, transportation, or healthcare, the left wants to use this crisis to force you ever more to buy what you need from the government. But you'll have no choices, and you'll own nothing in the process. So here's the argument. COVID-19 has been a huge win for the hard left. A nation cannot increase the power of government to control needed services while also maintaining choices. One consumes the other, and that's exactly how the left likes it. The more choices the individual has to make, the less likely socialists will be successful. Democrats favor confiscatory taxation in exchange for those government services. And in that, the government can withhold the services, but you cannot withhold your taxes. We already knew the Democrats would use the China virus as an opportunity to expand the government, but what we're seeing now, as I've pointed out, this is a worldwide phenomenon, so we're now one step closer to that Bernie Sanders statist vision, and that is us gifting power and getting very little in return. It's why we've been saying for years that government health care won't work. For over 100 years, the American citizen has been forced to trade the power to make individual choices in the purchase of services based in a competitive marketplace for a taxpayer-funded, near-to-government-run monopoly. This relinquishing of the freedom of choice for a government-run system or program has almost always been sold on the premise that the tax base must be used to provide a service to those who could not otherwise afford it, or that by pooling our resources in the hands of government, we, the people, can be provided with a better deal. Well, let me defeat that right here. We commonly use the word public to describe a government-run service. You heard me use the word government in the monologue. For example, I'll give you again, public education or public transportation. But why do we do this? Shouldn't we rightly call these entities what they are, like I did in this monologue? Government education, government transportation? The government loves the word public for one simple reason. When the government-run entity fails to provide a promised quality service, you complain, but they delink the term government from the term public. In other words, you're part of the public, but you might not be part of the government. See, if the public fails, it sounds like we're all to blame. If the government fails, then it's them who are to blame. This is how we masquerade central planning. Eventually, COVID-19 will be gone, but what will be left of our republic?